This talk was given by Roshi Rafe Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Saturday, April 18th, and today, 2026, and today we will take up a koan, something we've not looked at for a while directly. We've had commentaries in the reading of Finding Your Buddha Smile, coming home to what Zen is really all about. But now we'll just take this up, koan as a practice directly. Some introductory words. First of all, Joan Halifax Roshi recently posted a quote from Uchiyama Roshi on Facebook. And the quote went like this: "The life of a Zen practitioner is directed by vow, not by ambition. When you let go of the ambition, the life force starts to flow." The life of a Zen practitioner is directed by vow, not by ambition. When you let go of the ambition, the life force starts to flow. Uchiyama was an important contemporary Soto teacher, yet his words here are deeply reminiscent of something that Zen master Hakuin used to say. Hakuin, of course, was the very energetic revitalizer of Rinzai, not Soto, but Rinzai Zen, some 200 or so years ago in Japan. A couple of quotes from Hakuin, who will show up in today's teisho as well on the koan. In any case, he said, "How wonderful is the wheel of the four vows, which smashes the perverse notion that death is the end of all things. Its virtue surpasses all the secrets of the three worlds." He also wrote, "A fully attained bodhisattva refuses to remain in the final abode of highest enlightenment. Vigorously spurring forward the wheel of the four great vows, he works to extend salvation to all sentient beings. Even should the great void itself end, his universal vow will never be exhausted." To go back to Uchiyama, the life of a Zen practitioner is directed by vow, not by ambition. When you let go of the ambition, the life force starts to flow. So today's teisho, Gateless barrier, Wumen Quan or Mumen Kan, case 38. A buffalo passes through the window. The case goes, Wu-tsu said, "It's like a buffalo that passes through a window. Its head, horns, and four legs all pass through. Why can't its tail pass through as well?" His commentary: if you can penetrate to the point of this koan, discern it clearly, and give a turning word to it, you will then be able to repay the four obligations above and give comfort to the three existences below. But if it is not yet clear, pay close attention to the tail, and you will resolve it at last. Then Wumen's verse: passing through, falling into a ditch. Turning beyond, all is lost. This tiny little tail, what a wonderful thing it is. So, Hakuin, who we've touched base on, or with, comments on this case, writing, "Hard for even the most clear-sighted Zen monks to crack. A buffalo passes through the window, trips them all up. Four legs and both horns have little trouble passing through, but the tail, sad to say, is unable to gain admittance as well. A boundless empty void with neither too little nor too much. An earthenware pony warms an egg and gallops into a gourd. Wind rattling the old buildings infuriate the gods of poverty. Trapped in his den by hard frost, the fox whines and whimpers." So some annotations on this from one of Hakuin's heirs. Four legs and both horns have little trouble passing through. One of his heirs annotated this statement of Hakuin's, "The more you say about this, the worse it gets." And then the line, "Winds rattling the old buildings, the fox whines and whimpers." The annotation here is, "This describes our life at Shoenji in winter." Shoenji was Hakuin's temple, which was is still, visited there in 2016, a very humble place, almost run down, you might say. Not much at all. It's actually down an alley off a main thoroughfare. Any case, to the koan. In life, we'll face all kinds of situations, places, events, times that can seem beyond us, can seem impossible. Some are frustratingly simple, like we aim to be compassionate, yet we erupt in anger. We want to listen openly, but become irritated with what our friend is saying and cut them off with our response. We're dedicated to the environment, but drive a gas guzzler because an electric or hybrid vehicle is so costly. We have deep faith in the Buddha's statement that all beings are Buddhas, yet have the sneaking desire to do away with certain politicians. Finally, if we're Zen koan students, we encounter cases that seem like iron walls and sheer cliffs without handholds, yet nonetheless, we must scale them, like this case of the buffalo. Hakuin himself, formidable as he was, termed the koan of the buffalo one of the 8 nanto koans, which means difficult or hard to pass. Then again, the designation may only mean that Hakuin found them hard, not that everyone would. Koan practice is intimate and personal. Working on a certain koan may be more daunting or challenging for one person than for another. The difficulty is not intrinsic to the koan. To quote Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." Still, we can take heart from simply knowing that we're not alone. If someone as gifted and formidable as Hakuin found the practice difficult at times, maybe even impossible at times, why shouldn't we? When Aitken Roshi came to a koan that baffled and stymied him, he would encourage himself, saying, "I don't care if it takes me this entire sesshin to realize this koan. I don't care if it takes me months or even years to wake to this koan. I don't care if it's going to take me the whole rest of my life, but I will resolve it." In fact, the actual practice is rather simple, like writing, which American journalist, dramatist, and author Gene Fowler famously described like this: "Writing is easy. All you do is stare at a blank sheet of paper until drops of blood form on your forehead." You could say it's the same with the koan. All you can do is stare into it until it resolves itself. Or it's like shooting an arrow. You pull back the string and release it. Easy, right? Only hitting the target, let alone the bullseye, may be a whole other story. A few years back, I had a chat with an old friend who'd suffered a serious stroke, and having survived, was living quite compromised by it. Before that life-changing event, he'd been a rather successful person, and during our chat, he stated that looking back, he found that successful projects depended on 3 things: passion, perseverance, and talent. I agreed. Our project as beginner bodhisattvas is to grow up. The good news is that we all have the innate talent, every one of us. This is summed up in and is the essence of the Buddha's great realization revealed in the turning words he spontaneously offered. wonder of wonders. All beings are Buddha. But to actualize our innate talent takes work, which means passion and perseverance and humility. Trying and failing and trying again is how it's going to go. The good news is that this too is part of the process. It's not an extraneous kind of thing. Oh, I wish I didn't have to try and fail and try again. The effort we make renews our passion and actualizes our perseverance, all of which helps us mature. Failure can be a wonderful thing indeed, as Wu Men enjoys pointing out in the Gateless Barrier. Learning to let the koan work on us, the count to work on us, the breath be who we are, rather than trying to stay on the outside, manipulating or forcing some imagined answer to emerge, is what we learn to come back to again and again. We must get down into the dirt. There's no way to resolve a koan by trying to stay above it and mailing in our answer. But take heart. The ground is where flowers grow. Hakuin, as daunting as he could be in Doksan, really formidable. Oh my gosh. When you read some of Hakuin's things and see the carving, the sculpture he did of himself, which sits in the back of his zendo, which we visited in 2016. He's ferocious, but he often went out of his way to offer really warm-hearted advice. One of his most important Dharma heirs wrote about his first own encounter with the old master, relating how he and a brother monk happened to see a saying of Hakuin's, and from seeing that single saying decided, and this was after they'd already completed their training with another teacher, they had to meet Hakuin and see him in Doksan. And after just one encounter with him, they each decided to stay on, pledging, vowing not to leave until they'd completed the great matter of Zen practice. Later, the other monk wrote that Daikyu, and that was the name of the one who went on to become an heir of Hakuin's, he said Daikyu was much superior in capacity, adding that he knew that after once crossing lances with the master, that he had lost. But I was unaware that he had taken me alive until I used up all my arrows and my bow was broken. He's saying Daikyu got it immediately. I just kept trying to face him down or outdo him or show him my stuff, and only after I exhausted every bit of my awareness, intelligence, talents, skills, did I realize that Hakuin was always way ahead of me. But Daikyu had seen it right from the start. Here's Hakuin's advice on ongoing practice. He put this in a letter he wrote to the layman Ishi, a physician who, despite a busy life and many commitments, developed an advanced practice as Hakuin's student. This letter appears, as all these quotes from Hakuin, in Complete Poison Blossoms from a Thicket of Thorn, the Zen Records of Hakuin Zenji. And this is a terrific book, translated and edited by Norman Waddell, a very noted translator of Zen texts. Anyway, Hakuin wrote this: students who have not yet penetrated to the source should not be troubled if their entrance into enlightenment is slow in coming, but they should worry if their practice is not pure and genuine. Students who have already penetrated to attainment should not be troubled if people fail to revere them, but they should be concerned about the difficulty of achieving practice that is pure and genuine. The key point here is a practice that is pure and genuine, not holding to some special attainment or what it will bring to you in the world, but returning again and again to actualizing a pure and genuine practice with realization or without it. The pure and genuine practice is the whole point. And here's Hakuin's advice to the layman Ayabe, another advanced lay student of his. This is a lengthier one, but here we go. Some of the ancient sages managed to live tens of thousands of years, yet even lives as long as these are mere flowers in the air, more fleeting than a galloping horse glimpsed through a chink in a wall. That's a quote from the Vimalakirti Sutra, that reality is like a horse seen galloping past a crack in the wall that you're viewing it through. No sooner here than gone. Anyway, compared to their lives, ours are as brief as a mayfly's, ephemeral as a fleck of foam in the water. Buddhism teaches us that it is wise to believe in cause and effect and fear the suffering of karmic retribution. That a wise person is someone who seeks to see the selves, our own selves, true nature, by grasping his own mind. These are not words meant to deceive us, nor are they illusory teachings. They are the absolute truth, genuine and unadorned. I certainly do not mean that you should discontinue the meritorious acts you have been engaged in. What I am suggesting is that you should engage in continuous self-examination, as in who is hearing or who is the master, not simply checking in with oneself. That's not what he means by self-examination. He means really checking who's hearing, who's seeing. To do this even as you are devoting yourself to cherishing and caring for your grandchildren and children. Once every morning, read these words I've written. If doing this enables you to establish a firmly rooted faith, it will be better than 80,000 individual good deeds of whatever kind. How splendid it would be. And there's this. Once you start looking at Hakuin, it's really hard to not to find interesting and inspiring things. I mean, he was a great philanthropist. He was a fantastic prose stylist and poet. He was a terrific painter, artist, calligrapher, and he was just the dominating force in Zen in the early 1800s, late 1700s in Japan. Just remarkably a vigorous imagination, intellect, spiritual person. I mean, really remarkable. Kind of like a William Blake-like figure, but even more dynamic. Anyway, this is a quote in another of Hakuin's writings. He wrote, in the autumn of the second year of Kampo, which would be 1742, when I was at Ryotonji to conduct a large Dharma meeting, Mr. Mitani invited me to one of his lord's hermitage. The lord was an important daimyo, had built 2 hermitages in very beautiful locales. So Hakuin wrote, I was able to spend several days amid its beautiful natural surroundings. Mr. Mitani told me, my lord did not build these hermitages because he hoped they would someday become large and splendid temples. His true purpose was simply to provide a place where people sincerely interested in Zen practice, even one person or 2, could come and stay in order to concentrate on investigating the matter of their self. This really, of course, touches me when I think of Endless Path Zendo. I have no aspiration for it to be something large and splendid. It's a place where if you're sincerely interested in Zen practice, even one person or 2 can work on investigating the matter of their own self. It is a great mystery, isn't it? What is this self that sees colors with the eyes, hears sounds with the ears, thinks thoughts with the brain, feels with the body, tastes with the tongue? It's a great mystery all the time. What is this? In any case, Hakuin said, I responded to this with a sigh of admiration, saying, Lord Chikazumi is a truly wise man. If this aspiration rouses a Zen stalwart to come here, dragging a battered old cooking pot, and he hangs around chewing on nothing but vegetable stalks, and he proceeds to quietly and rigorously engage in hidden practice that is not making a big deal about it, and thoroughly investigates the great matter, which is the matter of our own self. What is this? Then you mustn't speak of this hermitage as if it were a crude hut made of a few handful of reeds. It would surpass by 1,000,000,000 times any monastery with its splendid golden halls. And as I said, Hakuin's own temple, Shoenji, was really small, rundown, and located down an alley right off a main thoroughfare in Hara. Now, back to our koan. Who was Wu-tsu? Eiken Roshi, Wu-tsu said, it's like a buffalo who passes through the window, if you remember. Eiken Roshi, in his Gateless Barrier, tells us that Wu-tsu was a revered Sung dynasty teacher who's featured in 4 koan cases in Gateless Barrier. This kind of repetition is rare, and it implies that that Wu men held Wu-tsu in very high regard. In fact, a Wu men was directly in Wu-tsu's line several generations later. Eiken Roshi adds that with each of those 4 appearances, Wu-tsu offers an original, distinctive, and profoundly humorous presentation. Wu-tsu was also himself the teacher of Yuan Wu, the editor of the Blue Cliff Record, or Hekikan Roku. I find Wu-tsu's creativity and humor very much at the heart of Case 35, in which he takes a popular folk or ghost tale of his time, and like a black belt in Zen Jiu-Jitsu, flips it over, turning it into a koan, which is the true Chen. Remember, we spoke about this in one of the chapters of Finding Your Buddha Smile. You'll find it, that's where the commentary you'll find in there. In the folktale underlying the koan, if you remember, a young woman named Chen runs off with her childhood sweetheart to escape an arranged marriage which has been set up by her father. Years later, married with as a mother with children of her own, she decides to return to her father's house to make amends. She's feeling guilty. And when she gets there, she discovers that a comatose version of herself had remained at home the whole time, and that her father thought that comatose one lying there unmoving in bed was the real one. So now there are 2 of her. But when the returned young woman Chen, who lived a full life, including love, marriage, and family, re-enters the house, the ever-dutiful daughter Chen, who'd been left unmoving on the bed, gets up, and the 2 Chens become one. That's the story, the ghost tale that was popular at the time. Then Wu-tsu asks, right, just tell me, which is the true Chen? Is it the one left lying unmoving in bed, who, suppressing the natural promptings of her own heart, had acquiesced to parental desires, stayed at home, and given up on her own maturing further? Or is it the one who, ignoring parental demands, had run away from home, determined to live her own life, a life of choice with love, marriage, and children? Which is the true Chen? Here we see Wu-tsu's deeply human, lively, creative style of teaching. Unlike many other great teachers, Wu-tsu had himself been a layman for some 35 years before receiving ordination, becoming a monk, and dedicating himself fully to formal Zen practice. This koan in particular of the true Chen speaks directly to life's dilemmas. By the way, in Kaplo lineage, which worked with the Japanese rather than the Chinese names, this would be titled Sei and Her Soul Are Separated, which gives us another way of looking at the case. In any case, there are no monks, no Buddhas, no bodhisattvas, no Dharma terms in the challenge of this koan. We are simply thrust into a dramatically live situation and have to find our own way out. To do so, we too must become as alive and as creative as Wu-tsu. His koan helps us, indeed forces us, to become someone who can resolve the koan's issue. Now, a bit more on Wu-tsu from Eiken Roshi. As a young man, here's the story, Wu-tsu studied Buddhist philosophy. And one day a fellow student challenged their teacher with the words, "If subject and object are one, how can the fact be realized?" The teacher said, "It's like drinking water and knowing personally whether or not it is warm or cold." Wu-tsu said to himself, "I know about warm and cold, but I don't know about personally." His teacher could not explain it to him and suggested he take up Zen practice. Accordingly, he wandered from temple to temple, finally settling in the assembly of Baiyun. One day he heard the master give the following teisho. "There are several monks from Mount Lu who've had satori. If you have them speak, they give beautiful talks. If you ask them regarding koans, they answer clearly. If you ask them to write pithy commentaries, they do so nicely. Yet they have not attained it." Wu-tsu was dumbfounded by this. Ultimately, though, he realized it personally and tangibly. The present case is grounded on that personal and tangible vantage. Rick McDaniel, who's written a series of excellent books on the transmission of Zen through China to Japan to the U.S., in a book of his titled The Story of Zen, writes this. Asked to describe Zen training, Wu-tsu used this analogy. So see if this rings true to you who are doing Zen practice, if not formal Zen training. It's like learning the art of burglary. How about that for an opening? It's like learning the art of burglary. There was a young boy who was the son of a very successful burglar, but he noticed that his father was getting older and wasn't as spry as he'd once been. This worried the boy. What will our family do when my father isn't able to pursue his craft any longer? He wondered. How will we avoid poverty and starvation? After dwelling on this for some time, the boy made up his mind to ask his father to teach him the family trade, burglary. The father was pleased that his son had taken this initiative, and that evening he took the boy with him. They came to a large house occupied by a wealthy family, and the father showed the son how to break through the fence and enter the house without being heard. Then he brought him into one of the bedrooms where the family was sleeping. He indicated the large chests where clothes for various seasons were stored. Go over to that chest and gather its contents for us to take. But when the son bent over the chest, his father pushed him into it, closed the lid, and latched it. Then the father crept out of the room and, once safely outside, shouted as loud as he could, "Thieves! Thieves!" His cries woke the household. The family could see that the house had been broken into, but it appeared that the burglar had escaped. The boy in the chest was very angry about what his father had done to him. As he thought about how to escape, it occurred to him to make a sound like a mouse caught in the chest. The household servant, holding a lantern, went over to the chest to investigate the noise. As soon as she lifted the lid, the boy jumped out, blew out the lantern, pushed the startled woman aside, and rushed through a window. As he ran away, the members of the household chased after him. He could hear them gaining on him as he passed an old well. Looking about, he found a large stone, which he threw into the well, making a loud splash. He left one of his sandals by the well and continued on his way. The household members gathered around the well and peered into it, but couldn't see anything. Deciding that the burglar had drowned, they went back home. The boy came to his own house, still very angry with his father, but his father told him to calm himself and describe what had happened. When the boy completed his tale, the father embraced him and said, "Well done. You've learned the art." Sound familiar? So, case 38 of the Gateless barrier. See if you've learned the art. The buffalo passes through the window. Aiken Roshi says, to start with, you need to know about the buffalo. This is the water buffalo or water ox, an important member of the household for farming families throughout Asia. It pulls the plow through the mud of the rice fields and enriches them with its manure. Its power and placid disposition give it a place in the Buddhist pantheon with the lion of Manjushri and the elephant of Samantabhadra. Its figure is sometimes found with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas on Zen Buddhist altars. And on the side of the Zen, at the side of the Zendo here, there's a Manjushri altar table. It was made for me by a Tibetan craftsman some years ago. It's got Manjushri's sword and lotus blossom over by the window on the side. We have a buffalo, which was a carving that was a gift to Rose and myself from Roshi Kapleau. This, however, is not the placid, hard-working water buffalo, but rather a dangerous beast, a Cape buffalo, which makes our buffalo here rather like the wild, hard-to-tame buffalo of true nature, featured in the first 3 or 4 Zen ox herding pictures, which, by the way, was compiled around Wu-tsu's time, 12th century or so. But what shall we make of Wu-tsu's rather impossible buffalo? How can his buffalo walk through the crisscross lattice work of an open window? And yet, even though the massive head, the horns, the hooves, shoulders, and body all pass easily through, the tiny little tail won't. This is a puzzle. Indeed. Hakuin himself did several ink paintings showing a seated bull or cow or buffalo staring rather forlornly at an oval window, which is filled with latticework, line after line, up and down and across. It too seems puzzled, as if it's been asked to do the impossible, and is stumped. Yet in the koan itself, the buffalo walks through the latticed window with no effort at all. Head, great horns, and it would be the curved, sweeping horns if it's a water buffalo, powerful shoulders and solid legs, 1, 2, 3, 4, all pass through. But the tiny tail can't. Huh? This makes no sense. It's actually ridiculous. It's impossible. The challenge of our individual practice, nonetheless, is that wild and totally impossible as this situation is, we must enter the Doksan room, and Doksan literally means going alone, and present the true living reality of what seems to make no sense at all. In fact, what never could literally be. What's the point? How do we find and show it? And how and why does waking to it affect us deeply? So Hakuin has his point. It is a nanto, difficult to pass, koan. How do we make the deepest sense of something that cannot make sense? Yet sometimes what seems to make no sense may turn out to offer the greatest possible sense. Does life make sense? Is it a well-organized story? Does catching a ball thrown our way make sense? Our hand reaches out, fingers closed, the ball is caught. Did we figure out how to do it? Did we even do it? But if not us, then who? And how does a plate of spaghetti become muscle, bone, thought, and emotion? What is digestion? Does it make any sense? How do the cells and nerves of an eye and brain create the vividness we experience? Where do we experience it from? Of color, of red and green. Where do I see these colors from? Is there some vantage I look from? Where is this eye that's seeing? What sense is there in any of the realities we take so for granted that we're actually unconscious of? And yet here they are. We see, we hear, we taste, we feel, we think. Do we know where our thoughts come from? Do we have to think our way to think our thoughts? And speaking of thinking, we get ourselves into awful binds over and with thought, don't we? Until we feel so isolated and so imprisoned by it that we find we have to take up Zen practice. Each koan is itself a gateless gate. A Zen term which is itself rather wonderfully nonsensical. A koan is not a pointer to some future depth of practice any more than each moment of life is a pointer to something more significant. This is it. This moment. This is your life. A buffalo passing through the window and its tail not passing. Its whole purpose of this little story is to help us enter and pass through this particular gateless gate. What's on the other side? Hakuin wrote that if realization of our own nature depended on a journey to distant lands, if it was far off in India or China, then we'd have reason to mourn. But it is in reality right now, closer than close, not off across the seas in a foreign land. In his Zazen Wasan song in praise of Zazen, Hakuin says, we're like someone already in water who's still blindly, stubbornly crying out with thirst. What a vivid image. The Buddha way is here, where we are. The place where we stand is the pure lotus land, and this very body, the body of Buddha. Could it be more explicit? Was Hakuin a fool or a liar? If not, what does he mean? And who is he talking about? Is logic the be-all and end-all of living? Can even the most technically precise and clear scientific description of, let's say, vision give to us our own vividly personal experience of red flowers, blue skies, green grass, the joy we find upon seeing a child smile? Can a description give us the actual taste of a cup of first flush Darjeeling tea? By what wisdom do I myself know it personally? Which of course means intimately. But intimate to whom? How intimate is intimate? What does it intimate? Our entrance into the koan begins with a question. What does passing through the window mean? That's where we have to start. The buffalo passes through the window. What does this mean? After which we must resolve the issue of the tail and face checking questions from the teacher to map out how intimate our view has become. I worked on this with Aiken Roshi after having already successfully passed it years earlier with Kapla Roshi, whose demonstration of the koan, let me add, was truly wonderful, really something to see. But after Aiken Roshi accepted my demonstration, he surprised me by asking further questions. What's the color of the buffalo? And once I'd resolved that, I was told to bear the calf. Dane and Henry Roshi, founder of the Zen Center of Denver, my Dharma transmission teacher, liked to check students with Dogen's essential point in the Genjo koan. This is, to study the Buddha way, is to study the self. Did you not know that? Did you think the study of the Buddha way was about learning all kinds of philosophies or something? To study the Buddha way is to study the self. Now, to study the self is to forget the self. What's that talking about? If you search for yourself, what do you find? Do you find a little person operating levers and gears inside your brain? There's myself. What do you find when you search for the self? This very self that we're so concerned about all the damn time. You forget the self when you look for the self. To forget the self, get this, is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains. And this no trace continues endlessly. Wow. There it is. I mean, Dogen sums up the whole thing, and that's it. Show's over. Go home. That's all, folks, if you remember Looney Tunes. That's it. No more to say. But, of course, I'll go on. In light of this, I find a beautiful verse in the Denko Roku, a Soto document, which we look at as a series of koans at the very end of our training, or towards the very end of our koan training. Goes like this. This is from Transmission of the Light, Denko Roku, Transmission 6. Though we find clear waters reaching to the vast blue sky in autumn, how can it compare with a hazy moon on a spring night? Most people want to have it pure white, but sweep as you will, you cannot empty the mind. That we find clear waters reaching to the vast blue sky in autumn, how can it compare with a hazy moon on a spring night? Most people want to have it pure white, but sweep as you will, you cannot empty the mind. Now, while many people assume this "you cannot empty the mind" refers to the endless arising of thoughts, images, memories in the mind, I think that falls short. There is something much more fundamental and more true, not simply about the act of practice, but about reality itself that's being presented. You cannot empty the mind. To go further down that rabbit hole and perhaps create even more confusion, I'd like to add something from the world of fairy tales. Why? Well, truth cannot be the possession of any one religion or even of religion at all if it's truth. In fact, this is where religion collapses and fundamentalist violence can begin if you think your religion owns the truth. And this sadly happens far too often. Human history is littered with painfully stark evidence of our tendency to cling like ghosts to anything that makes us feel substantial and not empty. Shame on us. At least Zen says we're empty. If Zen presents life truths, then it's not something we can cling to. We must live it. That's the point. We must live it. And it can't be something owned by Zen. So what may come closest, perhaps because its roots are the oldest, going back maybe into the Paleolithic itself, showing us what works in life and what fails, is the universal language of wisdom and compassion found in so-called fairy tales. Aiken Roshi wrote that koans are the fairy tales of Zen, and fairy tales are the koans of the world community. My own sense, gathered from years of working with, telling, and retelling traditional literatures, is that they preserve very hard-won truths essential to human survival, the nature of good and evil, of the consequences of living by self-centered illusion, or by the selfless realities of innate wisdom and compassion, of a life of isolation or a life of connection to all living things, trees, animals, oceans, rivers, stars, as a real insight, these consequences into the workings of karma, how in short, one good turn deserves another, as so many fairy tales put it, and how cruel and selfish actions rebound on their doers, are all held up to the light of our awareness by these old tales, too often relegated to the nursery. The insights encoded in, embodied, and demonstrated by these old stories guided and sustained generations of our ancestors and their communities, and they still guide us today if we're mature enough to hold to them, as they will guide future generations. In any case, a story I've mentioned many times, I think, before, the Grimm's brothers' tale of the Golden Bird, which is essentially identical to the Russian oral tale or skodsky of Prince Ivan, the Firebird, and the Grey Wolf. If you don't know these stories, you can Google them and find them, and you should know them. Anyway, in the story, either case German or Russian, the youngest of three princes sets off to find the golden bird or firebird that's been stealing golden apples from his father's garden. On the way, he befriends, in the German tale, in the Grimm's tale, a little fox. It's a wolf in the Russian one, which makes sense. In either case, it's a magical and wild creature. And wise wild creature. The animal helper tells the prince that when he gets into the castle where the magnificent golden bird lives, he must put it in the plain wooden cage, not into the much more seemingly appropriate golden and jeweled one. For if he puts it in the golden cage, the guards will awake and things will go badly. Of course, the prince can't resist the lure of the golden cage for the golden bird, and by so doing awakens the sleeping guards, who grab him, and then he's forced to go find the golden horse. And his fox-wolf ally reiterates the warning: don't put the golden bridle on the golden horse. Just use the ordinary plain leather one. Do you see the point? Maybe in Buddhist terms we can trace this wisdom back to the Buddha's profound realization under the Bodhi tree. Wonder of wonders. All beings, big or little, rich or poor, male, female, or more fluidly gendered, right now are Buddha. Zen is very clear. This does not mean that we have golden-colored skin, long earlobes, dharma wheels on the soles of our feet, a mark of wisdom on our foreheads, or have special powers like recalling past lives. A monk in all seriousness once asked Jiao Chu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" Jiao Chu's one-word answer, "Mu," reverberates down through 1,000 years of Zen practice halls to us today. The essence of Prajnaparamita's perfect non-dual wisdom can be summed up, if not in one word, then in one phrase. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness, only form. It's not that form segues into emptiness. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. This is the field where the buffalo roams. This is the plain. Oh, this is where the plain wooden cage and ordinary saddle and bridle glow with a life beyond that of mere gold. But try to use it to resolve this case. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form, right? And you'll be impaled on the ox's horns, the buffalo's horns. Then again, what about that little tail? Why is it so wonderful? Maybe all of this is simply a digression from what's truly the point. Secondary and useful, but not quite it. A bit too conceptual after all, perhaps. So, Wu-men's commentary. If you can penetrate to the point of this koan, discern it clearly, and give a turning word to it, you will then be able to repay the 4 obligations above and give comfort to the 3 existences below. But if it is not yet clear, pay close attention to the tail, and you will resolve it at last. And I'm going to have to apologize to you. We still have a couple of pages, so we're going to run a bit over. I didn't realize we get so dramatic with this and drag it out. So in any case, we'll continue if you can hold on to the end. If we are upside down, we should get right side up. This is the point. Living upside down leads to the entire litany of errors we know too well. Wars, misogyny, racism, ecological disaster, miseries. In short, to dukkha, dissatisfaction or suffering. Living like a wheel that's rubbing, not spinning freely on its axle, but running crookedly off-center. So it keeps making a groaning sound as it turns round and round on its axle. That's dukkha, the Sanskrit word we usually translate as suffering, but it really relates to the groaning of a wheel that's spinning off-center on its axle. But, says Wu-men, if you can penetrate to the point of this case, then, right now, in this life, just as it is with its issues, challenges, demands, and disappointments, you will be unburdened. As Bob Dylan puts it in Visions of Johanna, everything's paid back that's been owed. Satisfaction emerges with close attention to that tail that never passes through. It is where dukkha's endless dissatisfaction ends. Now, what are the 4 obligations we must repay? Buddhist tradition says that, well, we owe our parents, imperfect as they may be or have been, without whom we'd have no body, no life, no practice, no way to mature further from where we started out. We owe our nation, and that can be a challenge indeed, to realize that this place, this country where we live, formed us, educated, entertained, and motivated us towards lives of justice and meaning. It is the place without which we'd have no society, no laws, hospitals, schools, communities, no way to work and grow, no matter how flawed and challenging national boundaries can be. We also owe, and deeply, our planet, which in traditional terms would mean all living beings, and the planet is a being too, without which we would certainly have no life at all. We only have a life now because of the commitment of plants and trees and the millennia they put into working through millions of years to convert rock into soil and toxic oxygen into breathable air. We have a life with people because of rivers and microbes, iguanas, spiders, squirrels, lambs, and tigers. Our 4th obligation as maturing human beings who have faced impermanence and injustice and want to do something about it and live with greater peace and wisdom is to the 3 treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, without which what chance of actually living in light of our original nature would we have? 3 existences below are the worlds of desire, form, and formlessness, past, future, and present. Giving comfort to these 3 existences means fulfilling our great vow to save the many beings. Aiken Roshi, who translates the first line of the commentary, if you can get upside down with this one, discern it clearly, and give turning word to it, you can meet the 4 obligations above and give comfort to the 3 existences below, continues. In this one sentence, Wu sets forth the whole of formal Zen study. The first step is to get upside down, to look south at the tail, when all this while you've been looking north at the ox. This is a personal resolution on aha experience. The second step is to discern it clearly. After you have brought this matter of the tail home to yourself, you will see why it doesn't pass through the latticed window. The final step is to give a turning word, say something, or do something that will enlighten others about that tail. Let me add, but of course there is no final step, for beyond the formal finality of an appropriate response to the koan case is living your own ordinary life. Years ago, I've mentioned this before, Dane and Henry Roshi were staying with Roshi Kapleau in Mexico. They were walking along a rural road and came upon a rooster strutting along on its own. Kapleau Roshi stopped, leaned on his staff, and stood there gazing at that rooster. Then he turned and, with a radiant smile on his face, said to Danon, he said, Michael, that was his name before his ordination, have you ever seen anything so wonderful? Kapleau Roshi lived it and gave his turning words freely. With our own right understanding and right action, we fulfill our obligations to parents, nation, all beings, as well as to our worthy lineage of noble ancestors and peers, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Woman's verse. Passing through, falling into a ditch. Turning beyond. All is lost. This tiny little tail. What a wonderful thing it is. Here is the nitty-gritty of practice realization. Passing through, falling into a ditch. In Zen, pride comes after a fall, not before. It can be too much of a good thing. Turning beyond that, other falls follow as they go on, subtler, getting subtler, subtler, and subtler. Where does it end? Does it end? Where does it lead? Is it ultimately good or bad? Or does that even connect at all? That tiny little tail, how to express it? Is it just that or something more? Not only will we need to get upside down with this one, I'd recommend really getting inside out. What a truly wonderful thing it is. Blake, in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, wrote, enough or too much. Indeed, indeed. We'll stop here. And we will make our great vows together to the Buddha and Bodhisattvas on the altar.